welcome to PSN. I am Ishani and she's Priyanka. And thank you for being here with us. So,
Hi, how are you both?
we're good, ma'am.
Yeah, good.
Thank you. Yeah.
As we all know that you've been doing some great work for the economically weaker section of the society and to bridge the social and academic gap, through your foundation Samagra. But to start with, I would really like to know that how exactly did you plan to go for social work?
See, I'll tell you what, there's a lot of expectations that the needy in India have from the government, from individuals, from people who are better off than them. But however, not many people come forward to help them because we really don't know most of the times how to go about it. So, social work is something where they expect that, we will go and reach out to them, hold their hands, and see them through a lot of their own difficulties in their life. However, it's not a very easy thing to get into social work because it is more about your passion than about what you have. You might not be very affluent, but if you have the passion, you can get into social work and help the marginalized people who are out there wanting to be helped. They are always seeking help, but they don't know how to get the help from. So about and what I realized is to get these people out of their vicious circle of poverty, maybe the best thing is to help them in education, because once you are educated, your income cycles change, your social status changes, and maybe you get out of the slums and move into better things in life. And as a, what the kids these days are seeing in urban slums. So that is how I decided to get into helping children with education. And I have been into helping the underprivileged children in their education process for almost 14 years now. I started working with a charitable trust called Aurobindo Ashram, where I have been running a education program for the last 14 years, where we educate children from nursery till whatever level of education they can achieve, and then help them get jobs and livelihood, etc. And from there, the journey started in 2007, and this is where we are right now. And somewhere along there, I realized that, we had some more children in my own neighborhood where I live. They also need help in terms of education. And so, what you mentioned, Samagra, that is how Samagra, the thought of Samagra started, and we started this NGO called Samagra in Delhi.
Okay, it's like how could you tell us more about your foundation, yeah, Samagra, and what
Okay,
sort
I'll
of
tell you
work
what.
you've been doing?
Delhi government in the year 2000, I think it was somewhere in 2009 or 10, there was a act that was passed by the Delhi government that every private school in Delhi has to have 25% of economically weaker section children. And till from nursery till about grade 8, the education for these children is free. But somewhere along, after the grade, when they reach grade 9, the parents are expected to pay the full fee for the children. So in 2018, when some kids who reached grade 9, their parents, they were aware that I'm into social work and maybe I'll be able to help them with some part of the school fees, because the mainstream schools of Delhi means, these GT Goenka, DPS, Mothers International, Bhatnagar International, Vasant Valley, all these schools are the mainstream schools of Delhi, which are localized to where we work. So when the parents approach, the first thing you want to know is, let us see the academic performances of your children in the past. And what we saw was a really sad state of affairs. If you grade it on a scale of 0 to 10, most of the kids were skewed towards a 2 or 3 in terms of their academic performance. And once we got to speak to the children, we realized that it's not just the academic pressure that the children are going through, it's also a lot of emotional trauma they go through, because they are in these public schools studying with children who are from good households, upper middle class households mostly. So it is not just academic, it is also a socio-economic pressure which they face, which is impacting them emotionally. So on one hand, you are not performing well, and on the other hand, you are also not, as well off as they are. So so that keeping this, when we met a few of these kids who were going through this issue, so we decided that instead of the kids reaching grade 9 and then we realize that the children are not doing well and the need has to be addressed, we started taking children from primary grade. That's what we decided, that let's start a tuition center where we can start tutoring these children from nursery or prep itself, so that in the formative years itself their concepts and their basic concepts are clear, and they will maybe perform academically better as they grow in to the school levels. So that is how Samagra was born. We were all of us who started and who had a thought behind it. None of us are teachers. We all are, but we have a passion to work with the underprivileged, and that is how it started. And then eventually we, had 7 children who came in and joined us, and eventually we grew. And the only thing we've kept in mind very clearly is all our teachers are from households which are upper middle class upwards, so that not only academics is taught to them, they learn life skills also. When they come to us, we teach them behavior, how to dress, how to talk, how not to react when somebody is being rude to you, or how to be gracious when somebody is being nice to you. So that is the whole concept and idea of how Samagra was born, and it's been around for almost more than 2 years now.
I think it's a great thought. Hopefully, you'll be able to accomplish what you thought of.
Um, I'll tell you, slowly it is happening, because we started with 7 kids and now we have almost 60 children in our setup. And see, we are a little different from, there are some people who approach us and they say that we've not grown in numbers as much as maybe we should have. Our focus is completely different. See, government school, the Delhi government school teaching pattern is very different. You can have classrooms for those children, and you can have 40 kids in a tuition classroom and address as many kids as you want to. But this category of children whom we are dealing with, they need one-on-one personalized attention all the time. So we can't have big groups, because you can't have a classroom running. It has to be a one-on-one teaching that we do with these kids of these schools.
So, yes, it is great to see that you're not focusing on the quantity, it is all about quality, and that is what really matters. So,
Absolutely.
man, you must be very busy, working. So, how do you strike a balance between your work and personal life?
See, I'll tell you something. Since this is not a 9 to 5 kind of a job, it's not so difficult to strike a balance between, both the aspects of one's life. However, also I'll tell you, uh, the category that we deal with, for them, they all are either domestic helps in our houses, or the fathers of these children are either, auto drivers or drivers, or security guards. So for them, you can't say that after 5 o'clock, I'm not going to attend to your calls. These, you have to be available to helping them out all the time. Also, when the children grow up, it is not just academic. Sometimes, they have been bullied by somebody in the school. So if the child is feeling traumatized, say at 7 in the evening, and they call you with a lot of hope that my parents are not understanding, but maybe Sabita ma'am will understand. So when they call you, you can't tell them that my office hours are over and I'm not going to address your issues. So generally, I think at least in the category of social work where I'm dealing with children, we cannot close office at 5 o'clock and say that we are done with it. So it's a open working hour, and you have to keep yourselves flexible. Yes. So to that extent, there are no fixed timings, but yes, you balance is not so difficult also.
So, ma'am, what is your typical practice framework for working with students?
See, I'll tell you, when a child comes to us, um, when they hear about the Samagra, we call it a happiness center. because we want children to be happy when they come there. So when they figure out about the center, they generally, this I'm talking about pre-COVID days when we were doing physical classes, the children would, we generally would let the children come. We never say no to any child who comes to us, whichever time of the year, whichever time of the month, it doesn't matter, as long as, they have realized that they need extra help. So while we do a quick academic assessment of the child from their past performance, with a little chit chat with the child and exchange, it's a not an interview, but it's a informal chat which we do with them, and we figure out where the child stands. And once we ascertain what concepts the child knows, how much the knowledge level is, we take the child on to a regular tuition classroom, I would say, which is a group of 3 to 4 children or max 5 children. If we feel that the child is not up to, say, if a grade 5 child comes to us and we feel the child is not up to it, then for the first few months we try to teach the child independently of the children of his or her own age group, and we try to bring them up to that level first, and then we merge them with the children of their class, the other children. So that way, we keep the system, it's very systematic, it's very clear. We know that this child is in grade 5, but he only knows up to grade 2, or she only knows up to grade 2 level. We bring them up to that level, and the parents are counseled accordingly not to panic. We will teach them their academic stuff as well, which is relevant to their grade, but we will first bring them to that level and then do that. So that is the typical framework in which we work.
That's great. So, ma'am, it's just a general question. Like, what's your take on goals, timelines, and measuring success?
So I'll tell you what happens when we get a new child. We generally evaluate, as I told you, where the child is in terms of academic knowledge. Sometimes we have to give the child 3 to 6 months to come up to the level that the child is expected to be in at. And in our case, it's a very easy way of measuring success, because once the child comes up to the academic standard that the child is supposed to be at, then the your class tests and half yearlies and annual exams, how you are doing, the grades that you get, and that itself is an indication whether the child has performed well or not. And in that case, every teacher is responsible, who's teaching the little small group of kids, and they have to ensure that the child is performing well. For me, at the end of the day, when I sit with a review with my teachers, I sit and review them as if I'm reviewing my own child. So I have hundreds of questions for them. If the child is at, say, a 4 on 10 at the beginning when their child has come to us, and if depending on where the child is conceptually, we decide in 6 months the child has to reach at 8 on 10. I'm just giving an example. So if the child is not at 8 on 10, that the teacher is answerable to us. And then we do work out again, if the child has not reached that level, that what more do we need to do to bring the child. See, ultimately, whether we all agree to it or we don't agree to it, it's all about grades. It's all about how much percentage you got in your 12th or how much you got in your 10th. So we can brush it off sometimes saying that marks don't matter, but ultimately they do matter. And that is the whole objective of starting Samagra, that at least these children, if they can't even match the socioeconomic standards of the children in their other children, the 75% children in the class, let them at least match the academic standards. So then at least the confidence of these children goes up. Somewhere they know that we are as good, if not better academically. So, and even with the parents, when they see the progress of the children happening, I think they also somewhere really feel very motivated. So our whole objective is, the parents are happy. That's another big measure of our success, that the parents are satisfied. We do not treat any of the parents of these kids as, not being parents whom we are answerable to. We treat them like parents who would be anybody else. We don't treat them like slum people or any such things. And we have regular parent teachers meetings where we tell the parents also on how their child has been improving and performing better. And the grades are always an indication, as I mentioned.
I think that will set you apart from others, who are working for the same cause, because you're actually looking at it at practically, like a practical point of view. That grades are important as well. So, I mean, how has COVID actually affected your initiative? Has it made it difficult for you to provide education facilities to these children?
No, I'll tell you what, sometime in February, maybe towards the end of February 2020, we knew where the world was progressing with COVID, though in India it was still at a slower pace. Um, what we did is we trained our children on how to use Zoom and how to use WhatsApp. At that time, Google Meet was not so prevalent, and how to use WhatsApp video and how to use Zoom. And we stopped classes from end of February. So from 1st of March, we actually moved to online on our own in any case. And the children had their exams on till the 8th or 10th of March. So those 8-10 days were very critical because we were trying out something new and the children needed our help all the time. But the transition, maybe the credit goes to the children of this generation. The transition was very easy on them, and they kind of quite understood and got the hang of it very easily. And so we quickly, very easily and smoothly moved from the offline mode to the online mode. And then after they finished their exams, sometime in mid-March, when the schools give them a break, we decided not to take a break at all. So to familiarize them more and make them more comfortable with the online mode of teaching. So we did a lot of workshops and story reading sessions, etc., with them on the online mode with the same set of their own teachers. So by the time in the month of April, when the actual session started and the schools were still trying to figure out how to take on online classes, the Samagra kids were already very well trained on it. So it was not a very difficult thing for us to do. I'm very happy that way, that we did not stop teaching them even for a single day because of COVID. In fact, I'll tell you, there were some kids who have joined us recently who do not live in our vicinity and who are not in the schools that we cover, but they've heard about us. And since it's online mode, they don't have to physically come to us. So it's been fairly easy to take on more children on our platform now. So we have kind of spread our wings more than what we had pre-COVID.
That's great, ma'am. That's great.
So, ma'am, how do you feel about the welfare system as it is today?
See, I'll tell you, there are various government policies for welfare of the underprivileged. Some policies work, some don't work. But if there are a set of people who are into social work, they join hands, not directly, but on concept basis with the government, then the welfare system really works well. For example, in the case of Samagra, I'll tell you, I think the government decided on the 25% quota with some idea and some concepts in mind or some goals in mind that some children do deserve better quality education than the government school education that the other children are getting. Maybe it was a trial with this 25%. Now, I don't think when this whole idea was put into execution, they realized that the children will not have any support at home, and they will not be able to cope up with the standards of these schools. So on one hand, the government's welfare policy was there to get the children admitted, but on the other hand, they didn't know how the execution was happening. So if people like us, step in and hold hands with the people who are into trouble because of the government policy of, now these kids got into school, their parents can't even pull them out of the school because now where do they take them? So if people like us step in and work towards the program executed by the government, I think then welfare policies really work well. And in our case, with the 50-60 children that we've held hands with, I think we are moving in the right direction at least. And they are benefiting. at the end of the day, when they finish their grade 12 and there is a certificate from a good mainstream school that they are carrying, it is going to add to a lot, many other privileges maybe they will get in life later on. So welfare policies are good, but they have to be executed. And if not executed well, some people have to step in and help the policies see better results.
And it feels great to see like such organizations coming up and bridging the gap between gap which was there in the policies. So you're doing a great work towards it.
Thank you so much. Yes.
Uh, could you describe a time you began a new program at your school, and what steps did you follow to make this successful?
See, Samagra itself was a new concept because until we started this, we had not come across many people who had stepped into tutoring EWS children in the mainstream schools. There were, like, I will tell you something, a very basic thing. I had a domestic help whose children were going to a mainstream school. I didn't even give it a second thought. And I used to only say that, okay, if you're tutoring, I'll give you 1,000 rupees extra and you can tutor. But at the end of the day, they were again going to the slum people only to get tutored. So, but the need was not for them to be tutored by the same category of people where they live with. They had to be tutored from with, better off teachers whom they could not actually afford to pay. So, um, that to that extent, we were kind of, we stepped in as professional teachers. And one concept that we follow very diligently is, all our teachers, even if the teacher is an average person in terms of teaching quality, one thing which we very diligently follow is a lot of love and affection. The most of these children, they come from very troubled households, and it's all because of financial stress. Mostly your troubles are there because of financial stress. We did not want the children to come to us also and get scoldings every day that, you are not performing well or you're not understanding. So love and compassion is something which we actually conduct a workshop for our teachers when we recruit them. And now, of course, with COVID, we also have a huge number of volunteers who have joined us. So the only clause with them is, please be compassionate, please be loving. You cannot talk to them in a loud voice. You have to be very soft and gentle, because these are the most important things. We don't want to scare the children, uh, and they stop coming to us. We know that they benefit by coming to us. Whether they understand it or not, we really don't know, but we really know that they do benefit a lot when they come to us in terms of their academic performances. So that is some of the things which we follow in the school. We don't call it a school, as I told you, because and we can't call ourselves as a tuition center also, so it's a happiness center. And once the children see that the teachers are also compassionate and loving with them, and every time they perform well, we call all the children together, and they get applause for having done well. If they haven't done well, we also explain to them why they haven't done well and how a little more effort can help them succeed and do better in life. So these are the steps we keep taking in our own way, small steps to keep the children happy and going.
Yes. So on that note, like I would like to know that what do you think about startup networks, and how would you, like your initiative or your foundation, be able to contribute to this startup network or ecosystem that we are planning to make?
Uh, there's a feeling that I have that startup networks help us connect with people with similar thought processes.
True.
So, if the network is there, mostly people who have got similar thoughts will only connect and benefit from each other from that network. Mostly startup entrepreneurs are very experienced people in their respective fields. And I must say, they also have the courage to give up their regular 9 to 5 salaried jobs and start something which they think is out of the box, or not so usual for other people to get into. So when people not many people come out to do such things. Not many startups happen because people don't have, they don't think they want to move out of their comfort zone. And each one of us, I think, who have, whether we are an NGO or a business startup, we have stepped out of our comfort zones to do something for the society that itself connects us mentally and emotionally somewhere. We will, whenever I meet somebody, who's a new startup person, whether it's a business or consulting or an NGO, the first connect is that we know that we have stepped out of our comfort zone and tried to do something and achieve something which will be for the benefit of the society in at the end and the large, because see, startups also create employment. Now they do generate, so they are contributing towards the government also, because there is more, the incomes are getting generated, employment is getting generated. And in the case of Samagra, I would say that as a startup NGO, if we call ourselves a startup NGO, then we are also contributing to that ecosystem, because ultimately we will have some children who are educated, who will get into employment, and they will contribute towards the economy in some way or the other. So that way, that is how we look at our contribution to the startup ecosystem.
Hopefully, you'll be able to make the contribution that you're planning to make. So, ma'am,
Thank
how do you think Prabhasha will be able to, like, do you think Prabhasha will be able to, contribute towards this initiative of building a global startup ecosystem?
Of course, Prabhisha will, because not many people have come forward to get thought leaders together on the same platform. And when these thought leaders come together on a platform, we definitely get to learn a lot from each other. One more thing I feel, what Prabhisha is doing, getting thought leaders and startup entrepreneurs from different sectors. Um, very important thing to realize is that no startup is a competition for the other. Like, I don't see any new NGO a competition for myself. We are only helping each other complement from our knowledge and information that we have. And what Prabhisha is doing is getting us on a platform where I'm sure we all will be able to, if not now, at least the post COVID days, physically meet each other and exchange a lot of notes and information and knowledge. So to that extent, Prabhisha's this initiative is, I think, wonderful for people like us who want to connect with um, entrepreneurs and social startups and understand how they are doing it. Because see, this universe has enough, there's enough space for all of us. And when you create a platform like this, you are making them, everybody understand that there's enough for everybody, and nobody is a competition for the other. If we help each other and complement each other, we will only grow in the whole process. So I was very delighted when I heard about the Pravisha Startup Network platform.
That's quite a motivating feedback.
Thank you.
So, ma'am, how do you promote an environment that is conducive to helping each child succeed?
See, as I told you, the first step is extremely high level of love and care towards the children who come to Samagra. Um, See, love and care also, because they are told when they come to us that it's okay if you have not performed well until now. You will. That is the confidence we give them. So when you are compassionate and you with extreme love and care, they're explained that if not now, in the next 6 months, from wherever you are in academic performances, you will go up much higher. The children form the habit of coming to us regularly. See, any tutorial or any extra academic help given from external agencies is a waste if the child is not regular in taking the help from you. So to ensure that they come to us 6 days a week, we have to be very loving and compassionate with them. We always make academics important for them, but not so critical in the initial times. Yes, once they are into the system, then they know that they better perform. It's like that. But that love and care is definitely most critical for us. then, to make the children happy and they come back to us again and again, we celebrate birthdays with them every month. So whatever month birthdays are there, we do the celebrations. Every festival is celebrated with them. Where- Any festival that comes, we celebrate, we give them goodies, we ask them what you want as gifts. So they know that, if they want stuffed toys, for instance, or they want something else, they can openly come and tell us that next festival we all want stuffed toys. And so that whole comfort is what we have created with the children. Then once one of the kids came up and they said, we want to have annual sports day with you. So we take up a ground for a day, and then we do sports day for the children. Of course, this year we couldn't do it because of COVID. We do sports day. Then we also conduct various, sessions to build up their personalities. So there are programs on midbrain activation. There are programs on law of attraction. There are programs which we do for. So there are storytelling sessions. We have they have weekly dance classes, they have weekly art classes, they have super brain yoga classes. So all these things, the children feel when they go back to school and other children speak about going for, I go for a music class or I go for a dance class, they don't feel left out anywhere, because they know that we might not be doing it on a one-on-one basis, these classes, but in terms of the group classes, everything is being done for them. So we have weekly days fixed for them for art, dance, music, other than the regular academics. So they are told that 1 hour, 40 minutes of studies, and then 40 minutes of fun time for you. So at least thrice a week. And we have continued that with on our online mode also. And we are very grateful to people who have got associated with us. So, we've found volunteers who help us in all these extracurricular activities. So that is the thing which is making the environment conducive for the children to come. And of course, no teacher is supposed to get angry or get, agitated with the children. That's the biggest plus for the children to come to us.
So the last question is, um, any message that you would like to give to people to inspire them to take up a cause and work towards?
See, my only message would be that we all have enough in terms of material needs and comforts, etc. There are a lot of people out there who don't even have the basic needs in their lives. And if we all can come forward and contribute small amount, and it's not always about monetary contributions, even your time, your thoughts, your plans, etc., any way which you can come forward and contribute, we all must come forward. We are definitely more privileged than them, and um, it is always good to come forward and help the needy. And small contributions will only make a large pool out of it. There are a lot of times when we feel that, I don't have much to contribute, but anything and everything that you think about contributing is actually a large amount. It is about coming forward and opening up your heart for the underprivileged.
So that's all for today, ma'am. And thank you so much for sharing a lovely message. We wish you
Yes, and thank you for the time.
Thank you so much. Thanks a lot.
you're working towards a great cause, and we wish you good luck in taking it. Thank you so much, ma'am.
Thank you. Thanks. Okay.
Thank you, ma'am. Take care, ma'am.
Thanks.
Bye.
Thanks.